This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin in Westminster and Charlene White in the studio.
Good evening. He led the campaign to leave and now he's off himself. Boris Johnson, the man tipped to be the country's next Prime Minister, has announced he will not be standing for the Tory leadership. On another day of high drama in British politics, Johnson came under astonishing attack from his two main rivals, Theresa May and Michael Gove. Mr Gove, who had been assumed to support Boris Johnson, suddenly announced his own intention to stand. He said he did not believe Johnson was up to the job. Theresa May is now the bookies' favourite to win. Our deputy political editor Chris Shipp has been following the day's extraordinary events.
From the moment our cameras caught Boris Johnson sneaking through the back door of his own leadership launch,
come on, let's have it, come here.
It was clear his ambition to be Prime Minister had been sunk. And inside the room where he was due to make his bid, the MPs who'd assembled to support him knew it. Boris still did a speech, and for 11 long minutes it felt like a strangely subdued pitch for the top job. But the announcement, when it came, was not the one he had for so long wanted to make.
That is the agenda for the next Prime Minister of this country. But I must tell you, my friends, you who have waited faithfully for the punchline of this speech, that having consulted colleagues and in view of the circumstances in Parliament, I have concluded that person cannot be me.
He took a moment to take it in, so too MPs, including his brother Joe. But Boris's ambition to lead his party and country had just been cut stone dead. It happened because the man he had campaigned alongside in the referendum, the man who helped deliver a victory for Leave, Michael Gove, got up this morning and knifed his friend in the back. Because last night Mr Gove was running Boris's campaign, but at 9 a.m. today he released a statement. I've come reluctantly to the conclusion that Boris cannot provide the leadership or build the team for the task ahead. I have therefore decided to put my name forward for the leadership. This is the same Michael Gove who has said more than once in recent weeks, like here to Mark Austin, that he didn't want the top job.
But you'd rather be Prime Minister yourself?
No. The one thing I absolutely don't want to do is to be Prime Minister.
This afternoon, Mr Gove attempted to explain why he fatally wounded Boris's bid for number 10.
There were a number of people who had said to me during the course of the week, Michael, it should be you. I reflected on those comments. I reflected on the individuals who'd made that case. And I came last night, as I say, with a degree of hesitation, but ultimately, believing that this was absolutely the right thing to do, I came to the conclusion that it was necessary to put myself forward.
The Boris Gove drama both helped and overshadowed Theresa May's bid for the leadership.
My pitch is very simple. I'm Theresa May and I think I'm the best person to be Prime Minister of this country.
She spoke before he pulled out of the race, but her speech had been written when Boris was the opponent to beat. And it was time, she said, for a serious candidate to lead the country.
Some need to be told that what the government does isn't a game. It's a serious business that has real consequences for people's lives.
Without Boris Johnson in the race, Theresa May is a step closer tonight to Downing Street. As for Boris Johnson, an MP close to him spoke to me afterwards. In future, he said, acts of treachery on this scale will now be known as doing a Gove. Chris Shipp, ITV News, Westminster.
So there are 5 contenders who will battle it out for the Tory leadership and occupancy of number 10, as well as Theresa May and Michael Gove. There is Stephen Crabb, who declared yesterday, Andrea Leadsom and Liam Fox. Conservative MPs will have their first vote next Tuesday. Once the candidates have been whittled down to a final 2, it's the Tory party members who will make the final choice. Our national editor, Allegra Stratton, has been speaking to grassroots Conservatives in Bletchley about the decision ahead.
Chris Humble, chair of Bletchley Conservative Club, back from his holidays last night only to wake this morning and all hell had broken loose. Boris Johnson out and Michael Gove in.
Can't believe it. There we were in the middle of a mountain, we come home here and what's happened? They've obviously, for this referendum, they've joined together and they've been as one, haven't they? And now they've all got their own political ambition, and as we know, there's no friends in well, they're driving for their own cause, aren't they?
Watching the news unfold, there was disappointment with Boris Johnson.
I would like to see Boris, personally.
Why Boris?
I just think he's got the right attitude and whatever, but that's only my opinion.
But a clear winner emerged.
Thatcher was good, and I think that a woman could be stronger.
I like Boris, yes, I think he's very positive. And Theresa May, I think, would be a good candidate.
I think perhaps maybe we should give the lady a chance.
Go for the lady.
You're all saying go for the lady?
Yes.
What do you think of Theresa May?
A possibility. Definitely a possibility.
What do you think of Michael Gove?
He's all right, but not as favourable as Theresa May.
A lot of people in this room voted to leave the EU. Does the next leader have to have voted to leave too?
Oh, definitely, without doubt. I don't think we've had a strong leader for a long time.
In that case, what about Vote Leave's campaign chief, Michael Gove?
Perhaps I'll move more to Michael Gove over the next couple of weeks, I don't know. But at the moment, I'm with Liam Fox.
700 members.
Yeah.
If you put your finger in the air right now, who do you think they want?
Oh dear.
Don't worry, it doesn't have to be a final answer, but right now, what do you think they want?
I think they do for May. I think that's what they vote for.
David Cameron and Margaret Thatcher started off their leadership contest as underdogs. Tories don't traditionally like to elect the person who begins as favourite. Right now, survey after survey suggests Michael Gove is pretty popular with the grassroots, except the lunchtime trade here suggests he's got an awful lot of work to do. Allegra Stratton, ITV News, Bletchley.
Well, our political editor Robert Peston joins me now. Robert, where does this leave the leadership race and where does this leave Boris Johnson?
Well, it's almost impossible to believe that it's less than a week since we had that Brexit vote. Feels like a bleeding year. Now, Theresa May definitely out in front, running a very solid, steady campaign, lots of high-profile supporters. It's not always great to be seen as so out in front in politics. She is the one to beat. Stephen Crabb definitely has had a bit of a boost from today's events. Michael Gove, huge amount of anger in that place from his colleagues. They do believe that this was a ruthlessly executed coup. And not all MPs love what they perceive as betrayal. So right now I find it very difficult to judge how well he does. He might not make it onto the list for election by Tory members. As for Boris, unquestionably extremely damaged by this. To have one of your colleagues say you're not up to the job. Now, he is somebody who we know worships Churchill. Churchill came back from many setbacks. Whether Johnson can come back from this, well, I'm not sure.
Big question. Robert, thank you very much indeed. Well, the Labour Party's own leadership crisis took another twist today. Angela Eagle's expected challenge to Jeremy Corbyn appears to have been postponed, but there was no let-up on the pressure for him to resign. Today, at a launch of a review into anti-Semitism in the party, Mr Corbyn was accused of allowing a supporter to abuse a Jewish Labour MP. Political correspondent Carl Dinnan has more on this.
Are you going to stand for the leadership?
I'll be saying something later today.
But she didn't. Angela Eagle's team pulled the expected launch of her leadership bid this afternoon, in part because of the extraordinary events in the Tory leadership race, but also in the hope that Jeremy Corbyn is on the brink of resignation. Mr Corbyn's team continued to say that's nonsense, but this morning he cheerfully admitted he was in a tight spot.
We all know that despite the overwhelming mandate that was given by Labour Party members and supporters last year, we've all had a torrid few days. Well, at least I have.
He was launching the report he'd commissioned into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. But Mr Corbyn himself was accused of using unacceptable language for this comment, which some people thought equated Israel with so-called Islamic State.
Our Jewish friends are no more responsible for the actions of Israel or the Netanyahu government than our Muslim friends are for those various self-styled Islamic states or organisations.
And as if that wasn't enough, the Jewish Labour MP Ruth Smeeth then walked out over what she said was an anti-Semitic attack from a Corbyn supporter in the audience.
I saw that the Telegraph handed a copy of a press release to Ruth Smeeth MP, so you can see who's working hand in hand.
It all points to a pretty poisonous atmosphere within the Labour Party. Corbyn opponents say they've also faced unpleasant abuse.
I don't think, because I have that opinion and other people don't agree with it, that I should be threatened or abused in the way that I and my colleagues have been.
Mr Corbyn, have you had any doubts about your leadership? Jeremy Corbyn didn't answer questions about his leadership today, although his supporters did.
Oh, go away.
Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Westminster.
The Bank of England Governor Mark Carney signposted today a cut in interest rates in response to Britain's vote to leave. He warned the economic outlook had significantly worsened. Our business editor Joel Hills is outside the Bank of England tonight. Joel, how soon could this cut be then?
Well, the thing here, Mark, is that Mark Carney makes it clear that the referendum outcome is crystal clear, but the implications are not and may not be for some time. His concern is that faced with what he calls persistent uncertainty, households, businesses will probably sit on their hands and rein in spending. The economic outlook has worsened, and he said monetary policy easing will likely be required over the summer. Markets believe that means an interest rate cut, possibly in 2 weeks' time. Now, Mark Carney, you will recall, before the referendum, made a series of comments about the perceived risks of a vote to leave. He stands by those comments today. He was accused of scaremongering, but he told journalists he has no intention of resigning.
What we said in terms of the risks to the economic outlook, in terms of the risks to financial stability, does anyone in this room not think that those risks have begun to manifest? Does anyone in the country think that those risks have not begun to manifest?
Well, share prices rallied in the city today, but on the back of those comments, the pound fell, and some people have once again accused the governor of talking down the economy. There's another take on this, though, and that is this, that Mark Carney has identified a potential economic shock of Brexit, and he's decided to act preemptively and decisively.
All right, Joel, thank you very much. And that's all for now. I'm back a little later, but let's go to Charlene in the newsroom for the rest of the day's news.
Mark, thank you. Still to come. The young heart patients let down by an NHS hospital. And remembering the victims of the Somme 100 years on. All those stories and more after the break. Welcome back. The families of children who died at the scandal-hit Bristol Royal Hospital say a report into its failings doesn't go far enough. An independent review into the cardiac unit there found there was low staffing, poor care and called for major changes. Rupert Evelyn reports.
These are some of the patients who didn't survive. Children treated, but not always well. Luke Jenkins was expected to recover from heart surgery. He didn't. His parents feared wrongdoing, and today their complaints are confirmed in writing.
The aftercare was atrocious, and from what I understand, that's the same throughout the families who have been affected. This Ward 32 has just been a nightmare.
Twice, Jack Casey's parents were warned he was going to die. Brain damaged, he's unable to achieve many things expected of a 7-year-old. Despite the Bristol Review finding failings, his family are still fighting for the truth.
What our family knows that happened, that has not been portrayed in my report at all.
And you're not alone, are you?
No, and I'm not alone. And there is many families which were after us, and unfortunately in a lot, worse situation than us as well.
Backing up many of the families' complaints, the report found children were put at risk by low staffing levels. At times, care was poor. And there was a serious failure in governance.
The level of nurse staffing and the skills that nurses could bring to bear on the nursing of some really quite ill children were not sufficient. We thought that it was inadequately resourced, and as a result there was a risk of harm.
I'd like to say sorry to all the families where the review shows that our care fell below acceptable standards, where we didn't listen to concerns and complaints properly.
Children's heart services at the hospital are now good and broadly in keeping with other centres around the country. The issues raised are not as serious as those found during a public inquiry in 2001, but they're alarming enough to provoke a national review of paediatric intensive care services. Rupert Evelyn, ITV News, Bristol.
Authorities in Turkey have arrested 13 people after Tuesday's attack on Istanbul's main airport, in which 43 people were killed. 16 raids were carried out against suspected Islamic State members in Istanbul earlier today. And appeal judges have ruled that a woman should be allowed to use her dead daughter's frozen eggs to give birth to her own grandchild. The 60-year-old had challenged the UK regulators' refusal to allow her to take her only child's eggs to an American clinic to be used with donor sperm.
Welcome back to Westminster, where the talk is of the Tory leadership, Labour's woes and the future of Europe. But tonight, all thoughts will turn solemnly to its past. At Westminster Abbey, close to here, the Queen and Prince Philip will attend a special service this evening on the eve of the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme. And Princes William and Harry will be attending a vigil at the Thiepval Memorial in France. It's where tens of thousands of missing British soldiers are remembered. Our senior international correspondent John Irvine reports from there on the Somme 100 years on.
While the poppy became the emblem of remembrance and hope, it wasn't enough. Post-war atonement required a special place, the creation of a colossal monument befitting loss on an epic scale. The Thiepval Memorial is immense. It soars over the landscape of the Somme.
There are Commonwealth war graves and memorials in more than 150 countries around the world. This is the largest of them. After the war, the powers that be were determined to honour the dead by material expression as enduring as human hands and human art could make it.
The daunting edifice has nothing to do with victory or defeat. It was built to do justice to the 73,000 soldiers of the British Army who died on the Somme but have no known grave. All their names are carved into the Portland stone. Here the tragedy of the Somme is spelled out and read by people of all ages. These children are from South Hunsley School near Hull.
100 years ago, why does it matter?
Because without them we could have been speaking German like everyone says, but it's true, it could have happened.
What are your impressions?
I'm just really shocked about how many soldiers have no graves, and the size of the memorial, it's just overwhelming.
The memorial is also an Anglo-French tribute to the fact that the Somme was a joint offensive. A cemetery of Commonwealth and French graves lies before it. But most significantly, this grand complex of arches and etched names honours the ranks of the missing, the men and boys who weren't just killed, but wiped off the face of the earth. Here, as the epitaph says, their name liveth for evermore. John Irvine, ITV News, on the Somme.
And I'll be in northern France tomorrow as events take place to commemorate the Somme. Tom Bradby will be back at 10:15 tonight, but from all the team here and Charlene in the studio, have a very good evening.